Hello there, welcome to another video. In today's video, as you can probably tell by the title, I want to talk about my law of attraction, manifestation, metaphysics, quantum theory journey over the last 3 years or so. This is a very broad video, but I feel like I have a lot to say about it, and I think it'll be helpful to people. Sorry, there's like a construction zone right there. Some loud noises going on. Walking down a beautiful trail right now though in my hometown, but I feel like I have a lot that I can help you guys with because it's been sort of a long journey for me, albeit sort of short. 3 years is not a long period of time, but in that 3 years I have read so many books, I have watched so many YouTube videos, I have done so many different techniques to try to use the power of thought to actually help control my reality. And I'm like keeping a really hard eye on snakes in here because it looks like the trail hasn't been trimmed in a little while. It's like a public, like nature trail, but it's actually really overgrown at the moment. I bring my kids here a lot, and I might even have posted before on my other channel about us walking through here. But just to give you kind of a background, 3 years ago, a good friend of mine just mentioned a person's name. He just said something like, oh, that's like what Bob Proctor says. And I didn't know anything about the law of attraction. I didn't know anything about the law of assumption, Neville Goddard, all these different teachers that were talking about this. I didn't know anything about it. And all I said was, who's Bob Proctor? He was like, oh, you got to look into this guy. So I do some research and start watching his videos, and it's really out there. Like I've never heard of this, the subconscious mind, tied with the conscious mind and the paradigm that he talks about. And so I got really into Bob Proctor's work, and I think that was sort of some of the first, books I started reading was his books. But then something happened that I didn't even realize was like a synchronicity at the time, but now I really do. I have always attracted millionaires into my life. As a videographer, especially in a rural place, the people who have the money to spend on video are wealthy people. They either own businesses or they just want to, use my services because they can afford them and they just think they're awesome. They're like, it's like being in a movie to them. Well, this is probably the guy I'm about to mention. I'm not going to say his name, but he was probably the third or fourth millionaire that had hired me that kind of lived in my region. And he flew me to Nashville to shoot a video. Now, after the production of said video, we went to dinner. That night, normally what I do with these types of people is I shut up and listen. That is something I did learn at a young age from my grandmother. She said, if somebody's more successful than you and you're interested in what they do or maybe want to duplicate it, you should listen to them. Don't talk so much. Just soak up what they have to say. So I would do that, and I did that at this dinner. And I got to where I asked all these guys the same question. If you had one book that you could recommend other than the Bible, because that tends to be a lot of people's answer, to read, what would it be? And this guy told me to read Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale. Still looking for snakes. And I read it, and it changed my life. And we'll go into kind of the tiers of the levels of this, education, if you will. But Earl Nightingale and Lead the Field is like surface level. And I always say, you got a guy walking out of a factory, just a blue collar guy, and he's having a rough time, and he wants to better his life. Maybe he wants to make a little more money. That's the book I would hand him, because it doesn't say law of attraction in it. It doesn't say quantum theory. It doesn't say metaphysics. It doesn't say, dimensions. It doesn't use any of those terminologies. It's literally just like, it's almost like 12 steps, 12 different things, 12 different chapters. It might be more chapters than that, but basically practical advice that you don't realize is the law of attraction, the stuff that Earl's talking about in that book. It is law of attraction. He's just not using that phrase or that verbiage. Sorry, man, this thing is overgrown. I'm having to duck down just to get through here. It's usually not this bad, but it is becoming summertime. It's a big old spider web. Anyways, so that was the book I read. And still, I didn't even know or realize it was a law of attraction that he was talking about there. But I implemented this advice that Earl Nightingale, had laid out basically in Lead the Field, and my life just flipped on its head. I went from working a job that, although experience was really good, I was not happy at. I was underappreciated, underpaid, all that kind of stuff. And so I didn't work that job anymore. I went out on my own into business for myself, and things just sort of took off. Now, Earl Nightingale, if you're like searching for him, that's a good thing about the generation we live in, or the times we live in, is, I was reading Earl Nightingale, so then I was looking up Earl Nightingale videos. There's not a lot of videos out there. There's some audio because he was like a radio guy. But in searching for that, I start coming across all these other things. And the next thing I came across, maybe not the very next thing, but basically the next thing, is Napoleon Hill. And everybody knows Napoleon Hill if you're into this kind of work. Think and Grow Rich. That's like the most famous self-help book probably ever. And I recognized that when I heard it. Like when I heard the title, Think and Grow Rich, it rang a bell. I must have heard somebody say it, or somebody that I knew had read it, whatever. So that's the next step, right? I would say Lead the Field is like as practical and surface level as you can get. And then Think and Grow Rich is a little more dense. Not a lot more dense, but a little more dense. He starts putting the science, starts to slowly implement the science in Napoleon Hill's work. Man, these spider webs are crazy. Let's find us a stick. So yeah, read Think and Grow Rich, and it was really good. Actually, pretty hard to understand. And if you've ever read it, you'll know that even Napoleon Hill says you should not read this like just all the way through. He suggests that you should read Think and Grow Rich basically in stages and take breaks. And I totally understand that now. Now, the first time I read it, man, this trail is so overgrown, it is nuts. The first time I read it, I just went all the way through it, because that's just kind of how I do books. Like, you telling me I can't read your whole book? I got to get to the next book, man. Like, I'm going to read this thing right now. So, read the whole book. Really hard to grasp. I mean, it was just kind of a step up from Lead the Field. But then, went through it again kind of at the pace that he suggested, okay? And still, like, every time I read it, I'm an Audible guy, so I actually listen to all these books that I'm talking about. But every time I listen to that book, I get something that I swear wasn't in there before. But that's the beauty of a good book, and maybe the Bible is the best book about that. There's always going to be new hidden gems that you did read before, but you just didn't grasp it that day. You just weren't in alignment with that one little part that time. But anyways, Think and Grow Rich. I definitely suggest it, but not as your first read. And take your time with it. Go in stages like Napoleon Hill recommends. Wow. Okay, this just opened up a little bit. There's a lot of spiders on this trail right now. This is normally where I will come journal, which I did bring my journal, but it's just not looking like a place I want to sit today. It's really wet, nasty. There are so many spiders on this trail right now. So I got into Think and Grow Rich, like I said, and then it just kind of goes from there. Like, Neville Goddard was the next thing, and Neville Goddard is a little bit of a step beyond, or he's probably a couple steps beyond Napoleon Hill. And Neville Goddard talks about, living from the end. He has like so many different techniques and principles, and Neville Goddard, in terms of all the people, he's probably got the biggest cult following, I would say. And I don't know, there's just something about Neville Goddard that's more like mystical than, say, Napoleon Hill or Earl Nightingale. A lot of people probably never even heard of Earl Nightingale because he doesn't go into like the really detailed physics of all this stuff. It's more practical. But got into Neville Goddard, and I swear, guys, I'm going to tell you whether I think the law of attraction and manifestation actually works in a second. I'm just kind of giving you the layout and context of my journey. I got into Neville Goddard a good bit, read his entire 9 books, or listened to them rather, and whoa, like, talk about a mind F. Like, it just totally blew my mind. It was a whole nother step past the Think and Grow Rich type stuff, and I started implementing a lot of the stuff Neville Goddard was talking about, and lo and behold, it worked. Now, we're gonna go one more step, okay? And I'm using these authors as just like references. Get my stick here. Because in each of these categories, there's like multiple authors and multiple teachers, right? But I'm just giving you like maybe the main one in each category. So we've gone surface level, Earl, Nightingale, lead the field. The next level is going to be, you know, something like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, where the science is sort of getting introduced, but they're still not really diving into that. And then you've got Neville Goddard, which is, you know, he's starting to plug in the science, but almost more in a mystical type of way. And then this next level, and I know it's not the final level, but this is kind of the final level for me at the moment, is like the Joe Dispenzas of the world, where you really are getting into the science, the ancient history of these teachings. And, you know, this is where, to me, it got, okay, if you're a Christian like me, this stuff is spooky sometimes because it can be used for good or evil. Like, that's just a fact. But it doesn't really start to get tied back into the Bible for me until this 4th level, this Joe Dispenza level, because then you start to see all of the connections with the Bible and just Jesus's teaching. And that brings me to another book, Kingdom Principles. Check out Kingdom Principles. I can't remember the name of the author. I'll put it on screen, but in Kingdom Principles, he's basically connecting all of these teachings to Christianity and how they connect. And, you know, Jesus's teachings. But sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I don't get hit by any spiders. So now at this 4th level, at Joe Dispenza, you know, he's talking about meditation and, you know, going into the subconscious mind and changing your subconscious mind and all these techniques. And I mean, it gets really deep at that level. You don't have to have that, okay? My life was changing at the Earl Nightingale level, the 1st level. So if you're just not one of those people who wants to go super deep, that's totally fine. You can implement just that 1st or 2nd level. Now, let's talk about whether the law of attraction actually works. If it's even, or if it's just woo-woo, you know? I can tell you this. So in the 3 years that I've been studying it and implementing it and testing it, I have had great success. Now, it would be different if it's just in my head and it's a coincidence, like, oh, I was already going to be successful just because of XYZ, and it just corresponded when I started getting into this teaching, so it's just a coincidence. But let me tell you why I truly don't believe it is. I don't believe it's a coincidence because last year, and I talked about this in another video, I got spooked a little. And I can't remember what it was, but I was just like, you know, I just need to let this law of attraction thing go. I don't even like the law of attraction. It's just misleading. But the law of frequency, I just need to let it go and just do my own thing. Stop worrying about that. Stop studying it. Stop implementing it. And things went so downhill because I got sucked up into old ways, old beliefs, old frequencies, negative frequencies. And, you know, your reality is going to reflect what's inside. And so I just fell back into old ways. And guys, my business went from booming to like basically non-existent. It was strange. And I just remembered, I said, whoa, my thoughts control my reality. And my thoughts have been terrible lately. And, you know, I snapped out of it kind of. So let's just look at this timeline. In the 3 years, I had a good, I'd say 4 months of you know, going into my old thoughts, and things just went downhill. The money wasn't coming in like it used to. The relationships weren't as strong as they were. You know, my attitude was not good, and it was just not fun. But luckily, I had done so much work before that I realized what was happening. And I was like, nope, I'm not going back. I'm not going back to the old ways. I mean, if you look at my life, like in 2012 compared to now, which is over 10 years ago, it's crazy. Like, I never want to go back to those times. So anyway, I guess you could say I snapped out of it, and I got back into controlling my thoughts, controlling my mind, thinking positive thoughts, really seeing what I wanted to happen in my life as if it had already happened, and feeling those emotions. And yeah, I'm 31 years old, 3 years into this journey, and so the stuff I've created so far is crazy. So I can't imagine what is to come, but I will say that to me is what has really, I'm putting that stick down, that is really what has solidified the fact that you do control your reality with your thoughts. And I see evidence of it all over the place, you know, like I see people, or I interact with people in my community that are always talking about they don't have any money, and they don't. But it's literally, in my opinion, because that's all they talk about. They talk about how everything is so expensive. If milk was $4, it's too expensive. If it was 25 cents, it's too expensive. Like, that's all they talk about. It doesn't matter what changes in front of them. It's all up here in between the ears. Now, I see that evidence the other way, right? Because of the nature of what I do, I have the privilege of interacting with a lot of wealthy people. In fact, 2 nights ago, I was at a place photographing an event, and these guys were ballers. And we were chatting, you know, like just same level colleagues, right? Because number one, they're just human. And number two, I know how they got to where they are. And they know I know that fact, which is very interesting. The dynamic there whenever you're talking about it. And we were talking about like all these books I mentioned, you know, like I was talking to this millionaire guy about these, and he was like, oh yeah, that's the stuff. That's the stuff you want to consume. And so like, I'm getting validation from both ways. Like people who are struggling, always talking about struggling. People who are succeeding, never talking about anything but success. So I'm still testing it, and I will always be testing it. But right now, things are going great. Business is going good. I mean, like I don't have a job, you know, like 9-to-5 job. So I get to come out here in this beautiful national park area. I don't know if it's a national park, city park area, and walk around and talk to you guys. And I'm not worried. I've got some work I can do today, but if it doesn't get done today, it'll get done tomorrow. I'm not in any rush. Now, this might sound strange, but something that I cling to and that always grounds me whenever I do feel those old thoughts coming back is none of it matters. That sounds strange, but as a Christian and as someone who believes, you know, that this reality is actually the simulation and the real reality is your spirit, I believe that I'm a spiritual being. Therefore, as a spiritual being, I'm gonna stop here and keep talking, but because I might do my journaling at one of these tables. As a spiritual being, what happens here on this earth, like the money I earn on this earth, it's not gonna come with me into the next realm. And so when I have a little bit of money, I'm not worried about it. When I have a lot of money, I'm not worried about it. I don't care. I'm a spiritual being, therefore that stuff is just stuff, and it's very temporary, and it's not even mine, it's God's. God has just given it to me. And the less I worry about money, whether it's a lot or a little, the more comes to me. The less I care about money, the more money comes to me. The more I care about money, the more fleeting it is, okay? And I have tested this not even on a purposeful level. I just fall into old ways and money starts running away. And then when I don't care, I'm chill. If I get that job, okay, cool. If I don't, cool. All the money comes. It's the strangest thing, and it is non-intuitive to what we've been taught, you know, in our society. You know, it's always like, work harder, you know, sell, sell, sell. That's just never worked for me, and chilling out and letting God bring it has worked for me. So I hope that video helps you guys. For me, it is working. I will let you know if it stops, but as of right now, I'm just going to continue what I'm doing. And really the key is controlling your thoughts. Okay, it's not, you know, you can do lots of different techniques to supercharge that, but control your thoughts. There's somebody coming this way, so I'm gonna get off this camera.